Welcome back to another episode of Hospitali TV. Today we are born and raised in Little Italy with Laura Donadoni, also known as the Italian wine girl. That's how you're going to find her basically on all social media. How are you doing today?
Very good. We are in Little Italy, so I feel home.
It's practically home base for you.
Yes, basically yes.
Well, we've been talking about doing this for a while, and we're both pretty busy. You're much busier than I am. I feel like you're out of the country like every other week.
I travel a lot.
You travel a lot.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for taking the time. You are a certified professional sommelier, certified wine educator, but mostly a certified journalist as well, which I'm super interested to talk to you about today. But tell us a little bit about, for those who don't know, maybe give us a brief introduction about how you got into the world of wine, how you got into journalism. I'd love to hear that.
With pleasure. So as you mentioned, my background is journalistic. So basically I was a journalist when I lived in Italy, and I did that for more than 15 years before moving here. But I was like let's say, a regular reporter. So I was talking about politics, everyday news.
Right.
I was working for a TV magazine. I'm from Bergamo, so I live like 30 miles from Milan, and I was working mainly in Milan.
Franciacorta.
Franciacorta, so bubbles,
Perfect.
Italian bubbles, yes. And so I started out as a journalist, and I always had a passion about food and wine, because my family is producing a wine like as a hobby. Is not a wine that is on the market. So I grew.
Are they making sparkling wines?
No. In the area of Bergamo, on the hills, they produce like mainly Merlot and Cab, so let's say red wines. And so I grew up in the vineyards with my grandpa, with my dad. So I
That's so cool.
truly enjoyed wine since the beginning. And I was also passionate about food. I like cooking, and so at a certain point of my journalistic career, I said, okay, maybe it's time to stop like telling sad news and bad news every day, and maybe I should focus my attention on something like happier.
Yeah, like wine.
And like wine, why not? So I started deepening my knowledge about wines, getting my certification, sommelier certification in Italy, and then I took them again in the United States once I moved, and so I started to apply my skills, my communication skills, to the world of wine. And first as a wine reporter, so I opened my blog, my social media accounts, my YouTube channel, like spreading Italian wine culture through my media, let's say. And then I realized that Italian wineries and Italian Wine Producers Association needed help to communicate their wines in the US market. So Italy exports a lot of wines in the US. I think the most exported the most imported wines in the US is Prosecco. So it's the number one wine in the US. So there is a lot to do in terms of communication around wines in the US. So I opened my company, which is LA.com, which is a wine agency. It's a PR and communication agency focused only on wine. So I do only work with wineries and wine producers association to organize events, to do wine education, to build communication strategies on social media, this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So that's how I ended up here.
Amazing. So you at one point had your own food and wine show though, right?
Yeah, in Italy.
It's amazing. So that's like on a major network, you were the host?
Yeah, I was the host in Italy.
What was it called?
It was called the Sapori Lombardi, which is flavors of Lombardia, because I'm from Lombardia area. So I was like going around visiting wineries and restaurants, and like finding typical products, how people were producing typical products, typical cheeses, salami, prosciutto, and this kind of goodies. And it was the best time of my life, because I went around like tasting wine and eating food and telling this on camera, like interviewing the producers. So it was so fun. But then I have to left to come here with my husband, because he had to move here for business, and so I started over here.
Yeah. So you've done Gambero Rosso and Vinitaly and a couple of those things. So if you don't mind, for those who might not be really familiar with the Gambero Rosso and what that is, maybe what the Tre Bicchieri and what that means for a wine or winery, could you just run us through that real quick?
Yes, Gambero Rosso magazine in Italy is our sort of wine spectator.
Sure.
So getting the Tre Bicchieri Gambero Rosso in Italy for a winery is like achieving like the 98 to 100 points on Wine Spectator. It's the most prestigious magazine we have that scores wine and also restaurants.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a big deal for wineries. They submit the wines every year. They taste the wine blindly, and usually it's a team of people tasting the wines, and they assign the scores, which is 3 bicchieri means 3 glasses.
Right.
So they have a scale of 3 glasses, 2 glasses, and each in the book, in the guide. So that's how it works.
Such a cutthroat system, I feel. Like it's almost like 3 Michelin stars.
Yeah.
At least like with the 100 point, and not that I'm
exactly.
saying that the 100 points score is better, but you know, you get 97, 98, 99. You know, it's a really good wine still. It just didn't get the perfect score of 100.
Exactly. Let's see.
3 star, like with a 3 star, it's kind of got to be all or nothing. There's a big difference between the 2 and the 3, I'd imagine.
Yeah,
right. Just like for restaurants.
It's a different. Yeah, it's similar to the 3 Michelin star or the Michelin star system, and it's different from Wine Spectator and Wine Enthusiast because it's not like reported like as a number. So it's not like so precise as getting 98, 96, 99. It's more broadened, let's say, the option for the wineries to get scored in a, let's say, more flexible way.
Right.
Let's put it this way. And it's a big deal. And also now we have other system of scoring the wines. Now Vinitaly International Academy, for instance, has its own guide, which is called 5 Stars Wine. I've been a judge for them in the last 2 years. And it's also an interesting system because there is a pool, a team of people coming from all over the world. So different palates, also international palates, coming from the US, from China, from Germany, from all over. So they are wine professionals, of course, sommelier certified or wine educators. So in different fields. There are, for instance, people who work in the wine business as on the trade side, so more commercial people, or more wine educators. So it's different. The approach is really different.
Yeah, that's such an amazing experience.
Yeah,
I mean, have you run into scenarios where like somebody's throwing out like a flavor profile or a fruit descriptor that you've never heard of?
Yeah, it
some
happens
fruit
all
that
the
you've
time.
never heard of. You're like, what are you
It
talking
happens
about?
all the time because each of
cool.
us has a different background, a different experience of the world, of the flavors, of the smells you have in your life. So sometimes, I don't know, some people from Japan says, oh, this wine smells, and they tell a name of a flower that I don't even know what it is, but it reminds him that smell because of his childhood maybe.
Right.
So it's fascinating, and sometimes we have discussion in the panel when judging the wines about acidity or tannins or tactile sensation, because each of us has a different background from a gastronomical point of view. So we grew up eating different foods, so we have a different scale of acidity, alcohol, tannins, and this kind of descriptors.
Yep.
So the score that come out from that discussion and that panel is really like reliable. I mean, it's really multidimensional, if you get what I mean.
Yep.
It's not just one person scoring that wine and say, okay, I tasted 98.
Right.
That's it.
Right.
So it comes down from a discussion, from a team work.
Right. Oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah.
That's such a good thing to have. I just was having an interesting conversation with somebody the other day about, our tasting groups, and this guy had just gone to another city in the States even, and he was blown away by just the language that they were using. I mean, this is even within the United States, like not even a different country, but just going to a different city and seeing how they were approaching some of the flavor profiles that they were using. It's so interesting. It's so important to get that.
And it's really, to me, it's really like reductive, or I mean, it's really not easy to score a wine just with one number when you have such different, face of the same coin to evaluate in order to tell if a wine is good or not. So
let's talk about that. So you've done some writing for the Gambero Rosso. You've judged several different competitions here in LA and San Francisco. But could you talk about maybe some of the similarities or differences between the Gambero Rosso, some of the competitions on how they're getting scored, and then something like the bigger dogs like Wine Spectator or Wine Enthusiast?
Yeah, as I was mentioning before, the wine competition works like in a similar way like Gambero Rosso or the 5-star wines competition I was mentioning before, the Vinitaly International one. So, for instance, the San Francisco Chronicle, which I was judging at the beginning of January, works the same. We are a team of judges coming from all the parts of United States, from all over United States. So we have people from the East Coast, people from North Carolina, people from Florida, and they try to build a team which is diverse. So you have maybe a European palate like mine, and you have maybe a East Coast palate, so consequently like East Coast and also let's say so different from the West Coast palate,
Sure.
or from another state which has different food and different habits around wine.
Right.
And so they try to give the opportunity to the judges to confront themselves, so to share opinions and to build a score which is complete, as much as complete as possible. So we taste blindly, so this is the same for Gambero Rosso, for instance, or Vinitaly. So we just know the vintage, the price point in the US.
Okay.
They tell you the price point, and they don't tell you this in Italy. And the geographical area, of course. So we discuss about the wine, and we assign a medal. So in the United States, it works like a gold medal, silver medal, bronze medal, which can be similar to 3 bicchieri, 2 bicchieri, or no bicchieri.
Right.
Which is very different from 100, 98, 99,
Sure.
etc. Because not only the score is different, but also usually in Wine Spectator and Wine Enthusiast is the chief editor of that region that tastes the wine, who has the last word on the wine. So, for instance, for Italy, I don't know, Wine Spectator has his own journalist who is assigned to that part of Italy, and he's always the same person who tastes the wines and has the final word in saying which is the score of that particular wine.
Right.
So I feel like there's less occasion to confront yourself with your colleagues, and so it's more like it's less
It's
flexible.
one person's point of view versus the average of a collective team of tasters.
Yes.
Very interesting.
That's the main difference.
Yeah. So that leads me to a very interesting point, right? I think if we talk about, if we're kind of talking about wine scores and wine critics, it's a very interesting conversation to be had, especially compared to what's happening now with social media. Like you can say some of these guys were literally the original influencers, right? I mean, this guy, like take Parker, for example. Like, he's the biggest example. From a pre-internet era, like direct-to-mail magazine publication that he was doing, managed to become the leading voice in how people buy and what the price of the wine was in the market. I mean, God, so much around that. What do you, Laura, what do you think, how is that possible? How is that possible in your eyes for one person to get to have such a loud voice?
Yeah, Robert Parker was the first wine influencer for sure, because he started the whole thing of the scoring system.
Yeah.
So it comes from him, and it's a system that is dated today because it was back in the 70s.
Yep.
And I understand back at the time that people didn't have like instruments to decide which wine to buy, because nobody was educated about wines. So there was a very little low wine culture in the US about wine. So people were approaching wine as an everyday beverage that usually was not. Till like 30 years ago, nobody was drinking wine every day or thinking about having a bottle of wine every night with the dinner. So at the beginning, people were kind of overwhelmed and confused about the amount of wine on the market, and how can I decide whether this wine is good or not if I don't have any education about wine. So the score system seemed to be the easiest way. So you assign a point and you okay, 90 point, good wine. 82 point, bad wine.
Right.
So they had a huge influence on the market at the beginning. So with the years, this influence they had on the market grew a lot. And today, it ends up this way. So the Wine Spectator or Wine Advocate scores refers to the mainstream wines. So you can't get a score as a wine if you're not widely distributed in the United States. If you don't have a nationwide importer, for instance,
that's a requisite to even be able to. So if you're just a small guy, you can't send a letter to Wine Spectator like, hey, please come in and just taste our wines and see what you think?
How it works for foreign wineries, because I do that for some wineries, helping them to send the samples to Wine Spectator or Wine Enthusiast. You contact the magazine. The magazine asks for some information about the wine and how it's distributed in the United States.
Okay.
And one of the requisites for Wine Spectator is that it is widely distributed across the US.
Right.
So if you are a small winery in Italy with 10,000 bottles producing per year, you're not widely distributed in the United States. Sometimes you don't even have an importer. In that case, you don't get scored.
Right.
So because they have to do a selection, I mean, they are overwhelmed by requests. I mean, they taste something like 16,000 wines per year.
That's
Wine
insane.
Spectator.
Yeah.
That's insane. So the selection they do is, okay, if the wine is widely available on the market, I will score it. If not, I won't.
Right.
So what happened? That people is keeping drinking the same wines. And the same wines are getting scored, and to get access to that system is very difficult for the wineries and for the little producers. So they basically are cut out of the market even before starting.
Right.
Because then what happened? Importers ask to the winery, oh, are your wines scored? And the winery says, no, they're not scored because I don't have an importer or a distributor. And they say, oh, I can sell your wine if you don't have a score.
Oh my
so it's
God.
kind of a circle.
It's never ending circle. But that's where you come in, right?
Yeah.
That's one of the, I imagine that's one of the reasons you started the communications firm, was to be able to kind of be a spokeswoman for some of these smaller wineries that can't get a score, right?
Exactly, and things are changing now, because if this system of the scores was working when people was not educated about wines, today the millennials that are driving the market today, 42% of the wine purchased in the US comes from the millennials, so it's a millennials choice. So we are really focusing on that segment of the market, people with age till 35 years age, like from 20 to 35 years age old, are driving the market now. So, and they don't read Wine Spectator or Wine Enthusiast. They don't buy these magazines, for instance. They look up to the wine online. Right.
So a big turning point, right? So it's this one guy who has this big voice and is driving the market, but now everybody has a voice, right? There's a lot of noise out there. There's a lot of bloggers. There's a lot of people who call themselves wine specialists, you know, wine influencers on Instagram, whether they really are or aren't, or whether they actually have a good foundation in wine. You know, how do you tell apart the people that you think you should follow versus, you know, all the other guys without having to look into every, you know, different account and see what they're doing? I don't know. Or are there some people that you think are doing a really good job now on social media?
I mean, as you said, there is a lot of confusion now, because if in the past there wasn't like anybody scoring the wine, so Robert Parker was the first and they were starting, and let's say the GPS for the consumer were the scores, and there were just a few of them. Now there is like overload of information, overload of occasion to understand better that kind of wine before purchasing it. Right. So if you want to have information about, I don't know, a bottle of Franciacorta, you want to buy that, you go online and you can find a review from bloggers, you can find pictures on Instagram made by influencers, you can find information about the winery, because everybody has a website so they can give information, etc. You can find scores if the wine is scored or not. So there is a big let's say, basket of information and occasion to get informed about that wine. So, and your question is, how do you get to choose which is the right one? Because in this confusion,
or even who to trust, right? Like what voice to trust.
In this confusion, let's talk about Instagram, since we are both on Instagram, and I have a huge Instagram account. That's my main social media. Yeah, on Instagram you can find wine influencer who doesn't have a clue about wine. So they are not educated, they're not the sommelier, they don't even know how that wine is produced, but they post pictures of wine and wineries, and they say, oh, this fabulous rosé, and sometimes you can find also mistakes in the caption, like saying, I don't know, this Vino Nobile di Montepulciano is from Abruzzo, and we know Vino Nobile di Montepulciano is in Tuscany. So this kind of stuff.
Right.
So how a consumer can detect if this person is to be trusted or not? You need to educate yourself. Unfortunately, in this like overload of information, you yourself, consumer, need to do some digging and to, inform yourself about the wine world, and then you can decide which critic you want to trust and which of them is more reliable and which of them is just an influencer because it's paid by wineries to stick a picture of 100%. That winery on their profile.
Which we know is happening a lot.
Yeah. Yes. So the let's say the line between advertising and informing is very, very thin now. So that's the problem of the communication, the wine communication today.
Right. So that's great. So now let's look at what would be some advice that you'd have, if you could maybe share a couple of secrets of some of the stuff that you do. Like, what are some of the best techniques or best practices for a small wine brand or a small winery that's trying to come out? Let's give them the benefit of the doubt that they have a good product, because obviously the product has to be good, or nobody cares. If it's a horrible wine, just forget about it. It's going to be a tough sell. Let's say you make a good product and they want to stand out in the sea of influencers and information that's out there. What do you recommend for a small brand? How do they succeed now these days?
I would recommend them to make
And they can't go to Wine Spectator, like you're saying. They're not widely produced throughout the whole country or widely distributed, excuse me. How do these guys win?
Yeah, social media is a big occasion for them. So in this area, also these small producers, they have the opportunity to have a say in the market, because there are these social media and bloggers which are independent, and they work independently, and even if you don't have access to Wine Spectator or Wine Enthusiast, you can have some visibility online, which is something that is really important today, since millennials, they look online before purchasing wine. So I suggest them to narrow the choice to maybe 5 to 10 bloggers, focusing on the engagement these blogs or social media accounts have online.
What are a couple of your favorites?
In the US?
Yeah.
You mean, there are
like for bloggers that
bloggers, one of my favorites is the fermented fruit.
Okay, the fermented
which is
fruit.
Ryan, a friend of mine. He lives in Washington D.C., I believe, and I like him because he's very knowledgeable about wines, but he's a consumer. I mean, he's not a wine educator. He's not working in the wine business. He had a totally different background, but he informed himself, educate himself a lot about wines before starting writing, and he writes very accurate description of wine. What you have to look at is that if this blogger or influencer knows his or her stuff. So you look at the caption, you look at the articles they publish, and you see how accurate they are, how the descriptors are. So you, as a wine producer, you know if you try to reach out to this person, your wine will be for sure evaluated in a, let's say, right and fair way, instead of just being posted with maybe a wrong caption and miscommunication. So first, choose the persons and the bloggers and the influencer. And then you can have an agency, or you can do it yourself. You can reach out to them and try to understand if they will be interested in tasting your wines, or trying to invite them to some of your tastings, or send them information about the wine. So they probably receive a lot of requests, but if they're really curious about wine, and if they're really focusing about educating and informing about wines, they will at least look at them, and they will at least like consider them.
Yeah.
So not just for money, but for curiosity.
So Laura, what would be maybe some best practices that you would like to see in some of these emerging wine influencers?
I would like to see like more informed people. So I would like the wine influencer to be like more informative than, let's say, focusing only on the aesthetic point of view, like posting a beautiful picture but with a meaningless caption, for instance. So in that way you're not informing, you're just like showing a beautiful bottle of wine and saying, yay, I love it. So it doesn't add anything to, to the people who is following you.
Right.
So I would like to see like more authentic people, more real profile. There are a lot of profile also that repost pictures of other profile, and this is something I don't understand, because I have a journalistic background, so everything I post is because I've seen it with my eyes. I took a picture and I share it with people, or I tasted and I share it with people. So it's coming out from my real experience to the social media, to the people. So that's for me what a social media community needs to be like.
Right.
But I see a lot of marketing profile, just reposting beautiful picture and dreaming places and wineries and fancy situation, which are fake. But I don't know. I know they have a lot of followers, but I would say if you want to be a wine influencer, don't focus on followers. Focus on the engagement. So focus on how many authentic comments you have under your pictures, how many people contact you asking more about what you posted.
Right.
So even if they are a few, they're real, they are authentic. So that's you made a change in the life of that person,
right.
which maybe now is tasting a new wine and is daring to drink something different,
right.
because they read it on your profile. So that's your job, right?
I love it. Yeah, absolutely. And that's what we're doing every day.
Yeah,
we're trying to get people to try new different things and give them an educated call. If they like something, steer them in a different direction that they might, something that they might be happy with. So that's what brings me the most joy here on a daily basis, is being able to do that. So I think social media should be that platform to be able to do it on a larger scale.
Right. This curiosity about life, about wine. That's our fuel.
Yes. So I know you have to get out of here. I want to finish up with something though. I've been seeing you've been writing in a gratitude journal on your IG stories. Can you tell us more about that? Yeah,
it's one of the practice I do. I have a self-love practice, how people now call them, just to look fancy. But it's kind of like, to me, it's a way to pray. I mean, I'm Catholic. I have faith in God, and be grateful every day is part of my daily prayers. So keeping track of what I'm grateful for every day, and it involves wines all the time, because maybe I had a new a new wine and it was amazing, and I didn't even know it existed. So I discovered a new grape, or this kind of stuff. Always is in my gratitude journal, because life is a discovery every day, and even the small things that makes you smile for a while are worthy to be remembered. So that's
I love
why
that. I love that. Yeah, the mental game is such a big part of everything that we do. So thank you for sharing that. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Thank you for the opportunity. It was a lovely chat.
Oh, it's a pleasure. And guys, once again, you can find Laura online at The Italian Wine Girl.
Exactly.
On YouTube, make sure you go there. On Instagram, you got to follow her. She's super active. She posts a lot of things on her Instagram stories almost every day. You can follow her travels all throughout Italy. I highly recommend you do that. Last but not least, do not forget to follow Hospitali TV. We're on Facebook, YouTube. Please follow us. We're now on iTunes Podcast. We're on Spotify. Just look up Hospitali TV and give us a follow. Tell us what you think. Thank you so much.
Thank you.